Hello there. Today's video is a bit different in format because if you can see here on the screen, it's a sped up version of me building the M1A2 Abrams model out of Kobe blocks. And I'm actually just going to be reading a bit about the vehicle while that plays in the background. So, some basic facts and everything about that. I got a few different books here, and yeah, I thought I would change it up a bit. I know this is the last kit for now, but see how this works out. So let's see. I got this first little book here. It's a small little picture encyclopedia with a few technical details for each vehicle on each page, and it's just titled Armored Fighting Vehicles. 300 of the world's greatest military vehicles by Philip Truitt. And here on page 68 we have the M1 Abrams. Now the model is specifically the M1A2. I'm going to kind of float back and forth between a few different variants because they are mentioned in the various texts, so might as well include all details across the different types. But the M1 as a whole series concept came right after the M60. That was a main battle tank from the 70s. The prototypes were completed in 78 and entered service in 1980. And let's see. So let's see what this says here. Its advanced Chobham armor, I'm probably mispronouncing that, makes the M1 the best protected U.S. main battle tank yet. Its gas turbine engine is smaller and easier to service than a diesel engine, but the extra fuel requirement negates the saved space, which is perhaps why the idea was rejected from the Leopard 2. Thermal sights, laser rangefinder, and gun stabilization system give the M1 excellent firepower on the move, be it day or night. In the 1991 Gulf War, the Abrams proved itself the best tank in the world, knocking out Iraqi T-72s with impunity. No Abrams were destroyed by enemy fire. Now, I think there have been some contested sources about that in the past few years, but I've not seen anything too definitive. But for the most part, that is the common agreed consensus. Yeah, there were no losses. Anyway, let's take a look here. Another thing to note is down here there's specifications. So, it has like a crew of 4. It weighs about 54,000 kilograms or 119,000 pounds. A length of 9.766 meters, which is 32 feet and a half inch. Width of 3.655 meters, 12 feet. Height of 2.895 meters or 9 foot 6 inch. It has a range of 450 miles or 450 kilometers, or 280 miles. The armor, of course, is classified. Now, here's the interesting part. It says for armament a 105mm gun, and as one of the other books are going to mention, that was the initial test armament, right, in the very first prototypes and so forth. Of course, later on, it was replaced with a 120mm gun. And then there's, a coaxial machine gun, a loader's hatch machine gun, and a heavy machine gun for the commander. The gas turbine engine produces 1,500 horsepower, and maximum road speed of about 45 miles an hour, or 72.5 kilometers an hour. A fording depth of 1.219 meters, or 4 feet. Vertical obstacles, it can overcome those if they are 1.244 meters, 4 foot 1 inch, and go over trenches of 2.743 meters or 9 feet. And that is all for that first book. So, very simple, straightforward, to the point. Now, let's move on to this one. Okay, so, which one is this? This one is simply titled Military Aircraft, Tanks, and Warships. Visual Encyclopedia, more than 850 illustrations. It is by Jim Winchester, Robert Jackson, and David Ross. And all of these books here they're kind of like these visual encyclopedias that have a lot of more technical details and cutaway diagrams. That's my main fascination with them, is the technical side. So, let's look here. A lot of this will be repeated, so I'm going to skim over a lot of stuff, but hit the main points. So yeah, gas turbine engine, we got blowout compartments for the ammunition, separate ammunition storage, composite armor. Let's see. So, there was a modernization program here. Okay, so the M1A1 has undergone a modernization program featuring increased armor protection, suspension improvements, and a nuclear, biological, and chemical protection system, or NBC for short, which, honestly, most tanks just need nowadays. It's like a requirement now. Okay. The Abrams equipment includes a commander's independent thermal viewer, an improved commander's weapon station, position navigation equipment, a distributed data and power architecture, an embedded diagnostic system, and improved fire control systems. So a lot of computer-assisted combat and tactical assistance. Says commander has 6 periscopes, so that gives him view around the entire vehicle. He has that heavy machine gun we mentioned. He's also linked to the gunner's primary site, so they can, verify, hey, you see that? Yeah, I see it too. Target verification. Okay. System enhancements. So the M1A2, so it says here, it has enhancement to the processors and memory that enable the M1A2 to use Army's Common Command and Control software, enabling rapid transfer of digital situational data and overlays. So, let's see. They're able to share information with each other a bit faster. I believe in a different book that's actually, they can share this information quickly between all the other tanks of the unit, which for, intel, reconnaissance purposes, and planning is vital. Gas turbine engine. Okay. It was unique until the introduction of the T-80 in Russia, the Soviet Union at the time. Yeah, it's a smaller, lighter engine compared to like a big diesel engine, but at the same time, oh boy, does it take a lot of fuel. Speaking of the T-80, there's stories where like the T-80, the crew would leave it running, right, and it would just guzzle up the oil sitting in idle. I've heard that story a few times. That might just be, idle talk and a rumor, but still, the thought of it is interesting. Because it could very easily happen. They take a lot of fuel. And as mentioned, that's part of the reason why the Germans apparently didn't use it on their Leopard tanks. So the Germans and their problem with fuel historically makes sense. So they have, it mentions the 120 millimeter gun here. The engine, armor, and it just kind of says, hey, it has all this cool stuff. Makes it the perfect tank. Some of these do get a little boastful in their description of vehicles, which, makes sense. Everybody wants to parrot theirs as the best. But that one, that is all for that book on the Abrams. Only 2 short pages there. And then it moves on to new vehicles. Yeah. So, we'll bookmark that, and we'll move on to the next. Okay. Now, this has a bit more to it. Oh yeah, this has a few more pages to it. So, this one is 100 Years of Tank Warfare, Tanks Inside Out. And that is by Michael E. Haskew. Again, a very technical, visual encyclopedia. So, let's see. Very similar to the one that we just looked at. Again, it mentions Iraq. Let's see, mentions the gun again. The 120 is actually a re-engineered version of the German Rheinmetall L44. So, very similar. We see some similar weapon systems with the Germans. Composite armor, similar to the British Chobham, protects the M1A1. This includes steel, depleted uranium, plating, ceramic, and synthetic fibers. And protection ranges from an equivalent of 560 millimeters, or 22 inches, on the front glacis, to 90 centimeters, or 2.95 feet, on the turret. So that is, let's see. Yeah, that is a significantly armored turret. Makes sense if you want to go hull down and, fire from concealment. So it mentions the heavy machine gun again. Let's see. Another one at the Lotus hatch. Yeah. Okay, so that goes over those. Ammunition is stowed with armored boxes at the rear of the turret, separated from crew positions, armored bulkheads and blowout panels, so that way, all the pressure from any cooking off ammunition has somewhere to go. It doesn't go into the crew cabin. That would be very bad. That would not be ideal. It was a replacement, for the M60. Let's see. More than 8,800 M1 and M1A1 tanks have been produced for the U.S., Egypt, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. Okay. This one here is slightly different top speed. Provides 1,500 horsepower and a top speed of 67 kilometers an hour, or 42 miles an hour, on the road. The engine is reliable and quieter than a contemporary diesel, but high fuel consumption is a logistic challenge. Which, again, the Russians found out as well. Okay, crew of 4, driver, commander, gunner are situated to the right, loader to the left inside of the turret. Okay. Okay, so we're going to look here. Let's see. M1 enhancement program undertaken, including increased armor, the MBC defense, reinforced suspension, modified transmission. Another significant modification was the redesign of the turret gun mount and bustle rack. The changes increased the weight of the M1A1 by more than a ton, yet there was no significant decline in performance. The firepower of the M1A1 was significantly improved over its predecessor with the replacement of the 105 or 4.1-inch M68A1 rifled gun with the modified Rheinmetall L44 smoothbore, and that was designated the M256. Okay. Let's see. So they're made by Chrysler Defense. They were manufactured in places like Lima Army Tank Plant, which is from 1980 till today. Detroit Arsenal Tank Plant also made them from 1982 to 1996. Okay. Let's actually take a look here. Yeah, okay. So the dimensions are relatively the same here. Now they have different values, additional ones. Ground pressure of 0.96 kilograms per centimeter squared. They have the fording capacity about 4 feet, though it can go up to about 7.5 feet or 2.3 meters with preparation. So there must be a special kit that they put on there and special procedures that they go under. Advanced torsion bar suspension. Range on the road is 500 kilometers or 310 miles versus 300 kilometers or 180 miles when doing cross country. The power weight ratio is 17.2 per ton. That's what's that? Kilowatt. Yeah, kilowatt. Fuel capacity is 1910 liters or 420.7 gallons. That is poorly marked in this book. It just looks like a line. I'm going to assume that's liters. Secondary, we've already gone over those armaments. Armor type: homogeneous rolled welded nickel steel with composite applique to hull and turret front. And then there's a few variants here that they have listed as well. They have an experimental model, so the test beds and everything, that was the XM1. The first variant was the M1. The M1IP, the improved production, that was very short-lived. Apparently it was like a step between the M1 and the M1A1. Then, of course, the M1A1. The M1A1HC, or Heavy Common. This had the depleted uranium armor mesh, the pressurized MBC system, rear bustle rack for storage, and the 120mm gun was installed. M1A1D, or Digital, gave it all the digital upgrades, the computers and everything. The M1A1AIM, Abrams Integrated Management. So let's see what that says. A program whereby older units are reconditioned to 0-hour conditions, and the tank is improved by adding forward-looking infrared, or FLIR, and target locate sensors, a tank infantry phone, communications gear, including FBC-B2 and Blue Force tracking, to aid in crew situational awareness, and a thermal sight for the heavy machine gun that the commander has. Then there is M1A1 KVT, or Krasnovian variant tank. M1A1s modified to resemble Soviet tanks for use at the National Training Center, fitted with Miles gear and a Hoffman device. Then the M1A1M, an export variant ordered by the Iraqi army. Okay. Then here, there's a lot more here. During the Gulf War, this is where I think some people might say, oh, were there technically Abrams lost? This is where they might try to debate that. Only 18 Abrams were taken out of service because of battle damage. 9 were permanent losses. Another 9 suffered repairable damage, mostly from mines. Not a single Abrams crewman was lost in conflict while inside the M1A1's armor. So that's interesting. So there was some damage inflicted on them. They weren't some sort of godly tank that just went in and swept the floor. There was a bit of loss here. Okay, so research and development started in the late 60s after some joint research with the Germans failed. Then they have the prototype in 76, entered service in 80. Okay, yeah, they talk about Iraq and the Gulf War. The engine, again, the engine keeps popping up. The engine has proven reliable in extreme climates and runs considerably quieter than a diesel, so much so that it has earned the nickname Whispering Death for the M1. If it's a turbine engine, I would wonder if the intake ever suffers with dust. Of course, they must have already figured that out, made a solution for that, but I'd imagine there'd be some sort of issue with that. Or perhaps I'm just assuming wrong. Okay, let's see. And then they installed the 120mm gun. Digital fire control computer accepts data from the laser range-finding equipment and calculates firing solution while accounting for angle measurements. The bend of the barrel itself based on the muzzle reference system. Okay. Protection for the M1 has, since 1988, included depleted uranium encased in steel, which has a much higher density than steel itself, while synthetic fibers, ceramics, and rubber are other components. So you have a lot of different densities of materials, which makes sense, you know, when disrupting a linear kinetic force like a shell impacting your armor. Makes a lot of sense. Let's see. And then, of course, reactive armors for things like heat rounds. Okay. During Gulf War, there were incidents of Abrams armor being penetrated by the projectiles of Soviet-made T-72s. Ammunition storage areas and upper surfaces of the M1A1 are constructed to blow outwards in the event of hull or turret penetration, minimizing the risk of a catastrophic explosion and greatly improving the crew survivability. Okay. And then position forward center of the hull is the driver. Has 3 periscopes. One of them can be changed to night vision. His seat is reclined to reduce the profile of the tank. The commander is in the right side of the turret with a 360-degree view of 6 periscopes. Gunner, who is inside the right side of the turret, uses single-axis GPS LOS visual system and a Hughes laser rangefinder, which allows him to identify targets with documented kills at ranges greater than 250 meters or 8,200 feet. The loader is seated to the left side of the turret and often the second most experienced member of the crew, and has responsibilities for both loading the main and secondary armament and searching for air or anti-tank threats. And then that's basically all for that book. So that's the third book there, and we're going to move on to the final one. At least the final one that I could find within my bookshelves. And let's see what this one has to say. Okay, so this one has no author because this is a Smithsonian book, like a museum book. So it's more of like, hey, a team of people put this together. There's a big list of like these editors and designers and photographers, but there's no actual author. So it is quite literally just DK as like the publisher, Smithsonian, Tank, the definitive visual history of armored vehicles. And it has a big picture of a Tiger II on the front. So here, again, it kind of Here's an interesting one. This one's a bit dated, I believe, because of some of the mentions it makes. That might have been the other book. But it says here they've made them in large numbers. It equips 7 national armies. But it's been subject to the West's ambivalent attitude of tanks. The dilemma of potentially needing them and seeing others still developing them versus the pressure on factory capacity amid tightening military budgets. And yeah, these are pretty expensive to run. For good reason, of course. For good reason. Alright. So, let's actually look at what they have to say. Okay, so yeah, the gun, the crew, gas turbine, small and powerful, but twice as thirsty as a diesel engine. Depleted uranium, yep, laminate armor. Okay, the 120mm gun. They mention all the upgrades with the thermal sights and the handling systems. So, city fighting in the Iraq War led to the development of the Tank Urban Survival Kit, or TUSK, in 2006. They were fitted to tanks in theater to improve protection in built-up areas. So, they obviously learned from their experience, which is good, as any military should. And they can be fitted in theater, so kind of in field, so the soldiers themselves can fit these kits on, it sounds like, the way this is worded anyway. Okay. There is a slight discrepancy here, and it might be a discrepancy in the number produced for all nations, like, so all of them in the world, versus how much we have ourselves, because up here it says, oh, they've made some 11,000. But down here it says production approximately 1,500. So, I don't have quite an explanation for that discrepancy. Okay. Latest version of the Abrams is the M1A2 SEP version 2, the System Enhancement Package. This has added an auxiliary power unit, thermal management system, and upgrades to electronic systems such as communications, display screens, and sights. So they got a lot of computers, and thermal management, I think, mentioned later. Is basically like air conditioning. Okay. The interior is lined with Kevlar, which protects the crew against spalling, which is the splinters caused by the explosion of enemy shells. The ammunition's in a separate armor compartment. Blowout panels. Right. Good, good. This one doesn't have too much. Maybe, I think I might have skipped a page in the last one. Yeah, this one is very surface level introductory material here. Let's go back to the Haskew book real quick. Let me look at something. Okay, maybe not. Let's go back to the Winchester, Jackson, and Ross book. Because I read up on these a bit earlier, and there's clearly a section that's missing right here. Okay. Yeah, so they try to maintain the temperature at around 95, I believe. This is interesting. So, okay, so there we go. Okay, yeah, that's that one. So that seems to be everything. That. Flipping through all the pages. Welcome to my ASMR flipping pages video. I suppose I'm losing it because I remember reading clearly that there was a special section where it mentioned like the climate control systems in there, basically to prevent the crew from overheating, you know, improve their performance, reduce stress. There was mention, I cannot find it for the life of me now. Also, it was to prevent some of the electronics from overheating, because that was a main concern, especially when you're in a desert climate, of course, you know. Ah, here we are. Found it. Okay, so. Okay, here we go. Finally. I had to go to a different section of this book. I finally found it in the Haskew book. Okay, so not too much different, but I wanted to find that particular. So yes, like the SEP program gave them the new infrared systems, thermal management. Okay, so to keep a temperature of less than 35 degrees Celsius, 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Enhance crew performance, reduce risk of electronic overheating. This is where it gets interesting. Full color map displays with fast data processing and seamless compatibility with the U.S. Army's Force. Let me think real quick in Roman numerals. XXI, that's 21. So U.S. Army Force 21 Battle Command, Brigade and Below Program, or FBCB2, a digital battlefield command information system. And let's see, I know it's mentioned here somewhere. They have an external phone that helps them communicate with the infantry. They got the side skirts, improved drive terrain and suspension, protect against mines and IEDs or improvised explosive devices. Okay. There is talk of replacing that gas turbine with a new one. The LV-100-5. And it's currently in development to potentially replace it. This is the book that I think is dated because it says here the prototypes for the M1A2, right? They want them to be ready by 2014 and deployed by 2017. So I'm thinking this book was, you know, written in 2012, 2013. They armed the forces of Australia, Egypt, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. And at the time, Iraq was looking to purchase them. Okay. Yeah, there goes that. And they got a few pictures that it will assist with, you know, hey, here's a walkthrough of this position of the tank. they look like they have a decent amount of space in there. Like, of course, it's going to be cramped because you're in an armored box. But compared to something like, you know, a Russian vehicle, you know, how flat their turrets are like frying pans, in this picture, it looks like they have a decent amount of space to actually move around a bit, right? That's important. You don't want to be too claustrophobic in there. So, talking more about the M1A2, most significant upgrade, perhaps the most significant upgrade, came in the form of the two-axis gunner's GPS LOS primary sight, developed by Raytheon, greatly increasing the probability of a first-round hit. Okay. Let's look here. I don't want to be just repeating the same stuff over and over, although a lot of it just keeps coming up. They were talking about replacing the 120mm gun with the longer-barreled L55 made by Rheinmetall. Still a 120mm gun, but they say, however, such a change may never occur. The M256 has proven lethal, firing ammunition with a depleted uranium core, achieving kills from distances of 2,500 meters, or 2,734 yards, apparently with greater success than the European main battle tanks firing rounds with tungsten cores from the L55. So the material definitely matters, regardless of the barrel length and the raw velocity. And because it's stabilized on two planes, the M256 is capable of firing accurately firing while on the move. Okay. There was made mention so this last part here. So like it's going through a list of all the updates to the to what the A2 variant received. But so they're going here: terrain map display, thermal imaging, gunner sights, enhanced navigational equipment, integrated display, and thermal management systems for the driver. I like this last part though. A digital data bus along with radio interface equipment allowing for a shared view of the battlefield among supporting M1A2s. Again, they can share, you know, they see this part of the terrain on the left flank, they can share that data to the people in the center and on the right flank. And vice versa, theoretically. At least, again, how this is worded is what it sounds like. Which is pretty cool for coordination and everything. But, yeah. They have a few variants as well with recovery vehicles and so forth, but that is truly it for the M1 and all the sub-variants. And after talking for about 40 minutes, I'm going to go get something to drink and take a break for the day. For those that tuned in, I thank you for watching, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Peace.